Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Diamonds in the Rough, 3 strategies to learn more about current donors and prospects. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, so if you have to duck out at any point, rest assured you will receive an email with a video recording later this week. We've set aside some time for questions at the end, but we invite you at any time during the presentation to ask your questions in the question box on the right side of the screen. Today we have 2 members of the iWave team, Alex Quinn, Senior Account Executive, and myself, Ryan McCarville, Content Manager. I will be covering some of the high-level learnings related to the 3 strategies to learn more about your prospects, and Alex is on hand to demonstrate the 3 strategies using iWave's Prospect Research Online platform. So whether you're an iWave client or not, we'll be sharing a mix of general knowledge and also some insight into how our platform can help you. So with all that said, here's the agenda for today. We'll first consider the problem, or rather the problems facing prospect researchers every day related to this topic, and then look at the 3 strategies that can help you. Generally speaking, the strategies are quite straightforward. We have search, score, and screen, but we'll take those concepts from a high level and share some actionable best practices you can start using today to refine your research work. And throughout, I'll turn the controls over to Alex, who will show you how to use the 3 strategies in real time in iWaves Pro. And we'll finish by summarizing some of our key takeaways, and then at the end, I'll pitch your questions to Alex and myself for a brief discussion. So let's get started. If you work in prospect development, I'm sure you've run into this problem many times, probably on a daily basis. Maybe you've identified some major gift prospects, either through your own proactive research or maybe as a reactive request, but you still don't know enough about the prospect to make any major recommendations. A separate but still related problem is that you want to know if your current or former donors can contribute larger donors than they have historically, but you aren't sure what information you're missing to get started. It all boils down to a case of you don't know what you don't know. And as prospect research consultant Mary Richter mentioned on the iWave blog last week, a quote that I really like, you don't get what you don't ask for, meaning that without enough information, your gift ask might be too low and you end up leaving money on the table. But the reverse is also true. If you recommend a prospect to your fundraising team based on a lack of information, you risk getting burned with a major gift ask that is beyond the prospect's means. So there's a well-known figure in prospect development that about 90% of major gifts come from just over 10% or around 12% of your donors. And according to fundraising consultant Roger Craver, you generally have a 20 to 40% chance of securing a gift from a lapsed donor. You have a 60 to 70% chance of encouraging a current donor to give a larger gift this year versus last year. However, you have less than a 10% chance of securing a gift from a brand new prospect who doesn't know you and you don't know them. So the goal in the research department, as I'm sure you're all aware, is to increase the chances of success for our fundraising team. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But the question today is, how do we get there, especially if we're facing that issue where the prospect doesn't know much about your organization, and more particularly, we don't know enough about them just yet. So that's where these 3 research strategies come into play. Today we'll cover search, score, and screen. For search, we'll discuss how to find records, wealth and philanthropic records for one individual using a variety of methods, but specifically talking about iWave's 360 search. And next, we'll look at the opportunity of prospect scoring and how it can help you generate a snapshot of donor potential if you need to work quickly. And finally, when working with hundreds or thousands of incomplete prospect or donor profiles, we'll talk about screening to generate those scores and build profiles in batches. So, starting with search. So maybe a fundraiser or a board member has dropped a business card off at your desk, and that includes a new prospect's name, some contact information, and maybe the company they work for. So this is good information to start, and maybe you have a profile built out, but you don't know anything yet about their wealth or philanthropic fit for your organization. Luckily, you have some time to do some digging, so one of the natural things to do is to manually research the individual using the resources you have. Since Alex and I represent iWave, we'd like to walk through how our clients employ this strategy. And it all starts with what we call the 360 search. iWave's online platform is structured first and foremost as a lookup tool. So you can search your prospect's name and relevant information in the search bar, and the system will pull back all the wealth and philanthropic records related to that individual. When using 360 search, we often say less is best. This means you should consider starting with very basic information, such as a first name, last name, city, and the state or province that the person lives in, or where they're connected to. The 360 search is often great for prospects with unique names. So if you are familiar with the prospect, you could try searching for related records such as their spouse, nicknames related to that person, or spelling variations on their first name. One feature that differentiates iWave from other platforms is the ability not just to perform wide searches across all the data sets with the 360, but to search within each data set individually. So Alex will show you what I mean by this in just a few moments, but the question is, why would you actually want this feature? Well, a major reason is it gives you more flexibility with the search filters. So if you have a common name like John Smith in New York, a 360 search may return too many records that you can't quickly and easily verify are your John Smith. But if we take that business card example, where you have the name and address of John's company, you could search a corporate data set like Dun & Bradstreet, Thomson Reuters, or Database USA, and dig into each data set individually to find more information about that particular individual. So I think the best way to envision these steps is to see the iWave tool in action. So Alex, I'll turn things over to you. Let me see here. And we'll get Alex to show us how to perform a 360 search and maybe to add some records to a profile.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Ryan, and thanks to everybody who took their time to sit with Ryan and I today, and focus on these three strategies. So we should be looking at an instance of iWaves Pro, and you can see that I'm on the 360 search tab, and I'm going to do exactly what Ryan just described to you and take a name and pass it against our 1.25 billion records and counting. For any iWave subscribers on the line, you can see that an exciting new addition, a new data partner, is now in a beta within the platform, and you can see that we can actually search it using 360. So when we run a 360 search, that first and last name is essentially hitting all of these data sources and asking them, hey, ZoomInfo, hey, Relationship Science, Dun & Bradstreet, Thomson Reuters, on down the line. It's asking these different data sets what they have for information on that first and last name. So, in very short order, I can attain a lot of useful intelligence on the prospect that I'm interested in. You can see everything from employment records to property to, leveraging iWave's excellent database of charitable gift records. Here we've got 291 charitable gift records coming back, all in one place. So, as Ryan referenced, if we're looking to obtain a lot of information, a lot of key intelligence on that person, in one swoop, 360 is a wonderful place to do that. And as Ryan mentioned, beyond this, what can we do beyond simply, identifying these records and finding out that Sheldon has a $5 million property in Aspen and is making $1 million gifts to the University of Wisconsin? All of these columns and fields are fully sortable, by the way. So if we wanted to sort by a gift range, or perhaps by recency of political giving or nonprofit board data, whatever column it might be, you click on that column and it will sort for you. So to get into a profile after we've manually searched for these records, pretty quick and easy. We simply select the ones that we view to be pertinent by, checking off these little check boxes next to the record that comes back from that individual data set or data source, and then tell the system I'd like to add these records into a profile on Mr. Sheldon Lubar, or perhaps the Lubar household. So simple to do that. You'll see that I can do that quite quickly. And when I've done that, those records that I've selected and saved will now be housed in my Profiles tab. So if I'd like to, I can click in and actually view what those records look like in a more relevant context beyond what we've seen with 360. I don't want to jump ahead too far, Ryan, and get into scoring yet, because I know we've got another section of our webinar kind of dedicated to scoring. So that's all for 360 search and all for me for now.
Okay, great, Alex. So I guess I'll take ownership of the screen there again. You may have to do that actually.
I actually did. There you go.
Okay, so yeah, we're back. We're back here. Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks for showing us that, Alex. So yeah, as Alex mentioned, the second strategy we're going to discuss today is prospect scoring. So from time to time, we get some questions around whether scoring is really that helpful. You know, some people question whether the scores are really reliable or not, whether you can trust them. And you know, I know that for some researchers and fundraisers, an inflated wealth score might be exactly what led them astray with prospects that they didn't know enough about. We certainly understand the concern around scores, and that's why we really tried to address scores in a different way, in terms of presenting an opportunity for you, the researcher, or whether you're wearing a research hat. You may not be a prospect researcher per se, but you're in using these various tools, give you an opportunity to check an individual's philanthropic fit on a gut level. And since every researcher and certainly every organization has a different concept of what an ideal donor looks like, the score can't be the same across the board. It can't be an out-of-the-box type of thing. That works for some, but not for everyone. So the way that we looked at that is to introduce ProScore. And ProScore is simply an average of 3 ratings: propensity, affinity, and capacity. And if you subscribe to the iWave blog, you know that we talk about these ratings a lot, and we call them the 3 keys to a major gift donor. And they're really the bread and butter of this score. If you're unfamiliar, however, the propensity measures an individual's commitment to charitable giving in general, and affinity measures their interest in your specific cause, and capacity measures their ability to contribute large sums of money. So again, if you're an iWave subscriber, you can customize all aspects of the ProScore, from specifying the exact dollar threshold you consider to be a major gift, to selecting your organization's affinity. And you as the user have ultimate control, even to the point of refreshing scores when you add or delete records from the prospect's profile. All this is to say that scores provide an instant snapshot in time of a prospect's fit for your cause. If they have a high score based on lots of information, well, that means it's a great time to reach out. But if they have a low score or a score based on unverified data, strongly consider holding off on your outreach until you can collect and verify more information about that prospect. So let's return to that business card example. When we were using the 360 search, we had lots of time to dig for wealth and philanthropic information. You see that Alex went through that fairly quickly and easily, but it does take some time to verify the records depending on the prospect. But what if the fundraiser needs some high-level insight within the hour, needs it very quickly? Well, that's where you can use iWave's new Get Score feature. And all you need for this, really to start, is a name. The system will prompt you for more information based on the records that come back, and the system will automatically generate a profile and ProScore for you. You can then pass this on to your fundraiser. It won't have all the dots connected, but it will point some areas where you can focus your future research, maybe with that 360 search. And also, what if we're talking about a current donor already living in your database? Well, that's where the RFM score, or recency, frequency, monetary score, comes into play. This score analyzes a donor's internal giving to your organization exclusively. So within a donor's profile, you can input that donor's most recent gift, the frequency of their gifts, and the dollar amount of those gifts. And the RFM is a powerful indicator of whether your donor can give more to your organization or if their giving potential is at its limit. So you can use RFM on an individual basis within profiles, or you can also use it in the screening, which I won't get into yet. But for now, Alex, I'm going to turn things over to you again to look at, you know, how you can manipulate the ProScore, how to use the Get Score feature, and maybe just briefly highlight the RFM score in an individual profile.
Lovely. So I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to start inside the ProScore preferences section. As Ryan was pointing out, one score does not fit all. You know, this platform is used by a wide variety of charitable organizations across the world. And those charitable organizations, you know, represent a wide variety of causes. So, every nonprofit out there does not want to score their prospects the same way. So, we've kind of, bucked the trend here a little bit, and given our users the capability to customize and tailor this system so that it meets their needs. An environmental charity in Portland, Oregon may want to look at their prospects through a different lens than Harvard or Princeton. So each user has the capability to come into the platform and adjust these settings so that they make sense for them and the organization at that particular time in the organization's life cycle. So if I'm at an environmental cause in Florida, and I consider a strong prospect to be somebody that can give me $5,000 over a 5-year period, or $55,000 over a 5-year period, or $55 million. Whatever these parameters are that make sense for you and the organization. You can also customize how much emphasis we place on those 3 keys that Ryan was talking about. So affinity, capacity, and propensity might be different from organization to organization. You may be talking to a private school who's looking at incoming parents for the upcoming year. Affinity towards education might be more important to them in that scenario than capacity and propensity. So they can adjust these weightings to fit the project, to fit the need, to fit the individual donor that you're researching. These can be adjusted at any point in time so that they make sense for you as a user. Once you've done that, you will save those preferences and maybe come in and adjust your RFM. So as Ryan chatted about you, or with you about RFM here, an internal indicator on the philanthropic relationship that person or household has with your organization. So how much do they love us? How recent are they giving to us? How frequent are they giving to us? And how much are they giving to us? And when you couple an RFM score with our Pro Score, or even elements of our Pro Score, it can be a really useful combination. When you find out that maybe Alex, who has a low RFM but an extremely high Pro Score, meaning I've got excellent potential as a prospect, I'm wealthy, I'm philanthropic, and I like your kind of cause, but I've got a low RFM, meaning I'm not engaged with you that much yet philanthropically, that can be a pretty nice prospect to find. And you can actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself again, but if you are looking at our Pro Screen section, you can couple an RFM score with the Pro Score. So we'll look at that momentarily. You'll see that again. You can adjust what you view to be recent, what you view to be frequent, and what you view to be large amounts of dollars, and tailor the system to your liking. And again, save those preferences. So I'm going to show you what GetScore looks like. And I'm going to use a common name because, again, I think that this probably would be your best option when you do have a common name. And maybe that's all you have. Maybe you know a city and that's it. So if you've got that challenging name, 360 may not be as easy to refine. Using our matching logic will. So as you can see here, the system is smart enough to recognize that, hey, that's a very common name, Alex. I've got 1,693 possible matches for the name Mary Spencer. Can you at least give us a state? Well, in this case, I do know the city that she lives in, so I'm going to tell the system that I know she's in Florida, and I know that she's in Key Biscayne. And then the system's going to recognize that I've given it Mary Spencer of Key Biscayne, Florida, and it's going to take Mary Spencer of Key Biscayne, Florida, and pass it against, similar to what we've done with 360 earlier, and pass it against these different data sources, use the system's brain and matching logic, and create a profile and a score based on Mary Spencer of Key Biscayne, Florida. So you see it does take a couple of seconds to run through, but that is literally being passed against 1.25 billion records right now. So I can, I can wait 10 or 15 seconds for that profile to generate, and you'll see here we are. That profile is now scored and rated. We can see that she is inclined. She's philanthropic. She's giving her money away, and she's giving it away pretty actively. You'll see that she does score well in affinity, meaning that, hey, she's giving her money away to environmental cause. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and we can see that the capacity is certainly there as well. And must be some outstanding political giving records within that profile to give her that political giving score. You'll see again with our capacity ratings, if you're interested in seeing how we've come to that conclusion that based on her charitable giving, she can give you 69 grand over a 5-year period. If you want to see the formula that we use behind the scenes, there it is. Hover over that blue question mark and we'll tell you. You'll see plan giving scores or ratings are included here as well and driven primarily by age and capacity. Another indicator there would be if Mary has ever given a planned gift before. So the records that the system found to give us the scores that we see are also saved in that profile. Flexibility here is nice to have as well, and you always do control which records will impact your score. So if you went through and you said, well, I'm not so confident that this Mary is mine. Maybe I did know that she has a significant other or a spouse named Sash. These gifts I could be more confident in. You'll see we'll give you a confidence rating there as well. And if you want to see why we're 5.6 out of 10 confident that this is the Mary that was submitted, we will tell you the matching logic that was applied behind the scenes. You can remove records one at a time and refresh scores. So if you do ever have the case where you're just not confident enough in those 75 gift records being your Mary, you'll see again, maybe we want to look at the larger ones through a little more of an intensive microscope. Again, there's the match on the spouse name. We can remove those records. I'm pretty confident this is the Mary I'm interested in, but if I wasn't, I can always remove and refresh the score in real time. Just know that the scores associated with your profiles are not rigid. This is a living, breathing thing that you have control over. So from there, we could export and print. We could flip this over from unverified to verified. We could share, set an alert. There are a lot of different functions there. But maybe the most common feature from here would be exporting and printing that profile. If we've got to share that dossier or report that we've generated, or if we're in a hurry, we've got a meeting with Mary in 2 hours time, and we've just logged into iWave and spent a couple of minutes. Maybe we want to study this profile on the way down to meet her. So here we are. The scores, the ratings, the actual data points are here for us too. And that's the get score feature. I'm going to pass it back to you, Ryan.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Alex. So we've covered search, score, and now the third and perhaps the most powerful strategy that we're going to cover today is screening. So I would expect that many of you are likely familiar with wealth screening, and we often hear from clients who are entering a big fundraising campaign, and they're using screening mostly to identify new prospects. But it's also very useful for learning more about prospects and donors you already know. So remember that 90% of your major gifts come from the top 10% of your donors. And also keep in mind that over time, your database becomes out of date. So donors could change addresses, their wealth fluctuates, their personal circumstances, and their philanthropic goals will change. So if you're looking to segment and prioritize your current or past donors with updated information, but you have hundreds or maybe thousands of donors to look at, the 360 search or the Get Score features will take too much time to get everybody if you need to work pretty quickly. But a wealth screen is a great opportunity, and it can take just a few minutes to set up, and you can get your results within just a few hours. The important thing here is that for iWave, our screening looks at more than just wealth. We're also looking for philanthropic records and contact information. So you heard Alex talk about the 1.25 billion records. Those would include wealth, philanthropic, and more than that. So think of it like doing a 360 search and generating a score for each prospect simultaneously. And like many other features, you saw Alex customizing the Pro Score and RFM and so on. You can set those settings according to your specific needs and goals. That might be just on an organizational basis. You change it once, and that's all you need. Or maybe you're changing from project to project. In terms of actually submitting the screen, it's kind of a self-serve format. So all you need to do is download the template, fill it in with as many names as you're looking for, relevant information, and upload it to the iWave screening wizard. Some best practices to keep in mind. You may remember with the 360 search we said less is best, but with the screening template it's actually the opposite. The more information you have, the better. And whatever information you do have all counts. It also helps if you choose the exact settings you need before submitting to each project. And if your nonprofit covers different affinities such as religion and the humanities or health and education, you can test, or rather you can adjust the category with each project that you submit. And since you're changing around these settings and they do take effect in real time, we usually recommend submitting a test batch of just a few names to identify any potential formatting errors in the template before submitting the larger list. And remember also to include any internal giving data. So that's going back to the RFM score. And that's if you have it for a new prospect, you won't necessarily have that data, but for a current donor or maybe a donor that has since lapsed and is no longer actively giving to your organization, you can input that most recent RFM data, and the system will help you segment, prioritize those donors to see if there are any new opportunities for increasing those donations going forward. So I'll turn things over to Alex one more time so you can demonstrate how to choose those settings with a screen in mind and how to actually upload a screening project.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Ryan. These handoffs are becoming seamless now. You'll see everybody now that we're in the Pro Screen section of the iWave platform. So you've got three very key tabs at the top of the page. You've got your Pro Screen section, which we're in now. We're about to walk through. You've got any profiles that you've created here as well. You can see our Mary Spencer Get Score profile is here for us. The Sheldon Lubar profile that we created from our 360 search is here as well. We may want to nest those under certain labels if we'd like to do that, and the Get Score button is also located there as well. So it's a pretty key functionality located in that blue header across the page there. So Pro Screen. We're going to start with the blank canvas, and that blank canvas is your template. So you're going to populate that with the group of people that you want to screen. Pretty simple outline here. You've got names, you've got IDs, you've got cities, you've got columns that you can populate from your internal database or data set that you're looking to screen. So if that scenario is, the private school is looking at the incoming parents for the year, what we would need, required fields that you would need to submit of those new parents would be first name, last name, city, state, or province, and country. You'll see here the more information you're able to include or the more information you're able to provide on this input template, the better. So if you're able to tell us a spouse, if you're able to tell us a job title or an email, or if you're able to give us this internal giving history, the more information you're able to include, the better. Simply put. So we're aware that sometimes that's not always the case, and all you might have is a name and city, and that's fine too. We can still run a screening for you on that person or that household. But if you are able to populate these predetermined columns with more information from your internal database, please do. If there were any elements of information, if there were any data points that didn't fit any one of these predetermined columns, please include them at the end. You can include as many user-defined columns here at the end as you wish, and we will carry those over into your output file. You'll see for an RFM score, if you're going to do one, please include last gift date, total gift count, and total gift amount. If you're doing planned giving scoring, please provide an age and not their birth date. Any additional information, as you see, as I just outlined, please include these at the end of the spreadsheet and make sure to save the file in CSV format. Once you've done that, name your project. So if it is New Parents 2018 for private school for the Alex Hugh Private Academy, name the project, tell the system what you're looking for. Maybe affinity isn't important in this group of new parents. If it's not, uncheck it. If you're looking for all three, which in the vast majority of screening projects that we see ran, you will look for all three. Depending on the organization, You may have time to verify your results. I would say 99.9% of our screening projects and users do not have time to validate or verify their results after a screening. You know, if you do, if you're a larger shop with maybe a team of prospect researchers, you may say yes. However, again, I'll caution that by saying, you know, the vast majority of our screening projects ran, and you know, the most successful projects with the best results will be run at a higher confidence match of 4.1. Where we have the default setting. So if you answer to that question, no, I do not have time to verify my results, the system will say, okay, you're going to run it at the default of 4.1. If you say yes to this question, you'll see the system will then, you know, automatically decide that you're going to run this the screening a little broader and cast a wider net. So it will run it at a 3.4 for you. You know, I would probably suggest running your files at a 4.1 or higher, not too high. Again, if you go too high here, you run the risk of missing out on some potentially relevant records. So I think there is certainly a sweet spot there, you know, and that would be that 4.1 setting. So customize these ratings. Again, this might look familiar to you. Tell the system what you designate to be a strong prospect within this group of people that you're screening. How much can they give you over a 5-year period? You know, affinity, set it up. If it's environment and animals, well, maybe the environmental cause is working on a new educational program based around literacy. You know, maybe that affinity differs from project to project. So come in and set that affinity based on the cause that we're prospecting for with this group. Decide the emphasis. Move to the third step of the wizard, and you'll see this is where you can upload the file. So this is done as securely as secure can possibly be. We've got end-to-end encryption with this platform, so your data is as safe as it can possibly be. And you know, it's our responsibility here to make sure that your information, if you are doing batch screening, stays confidential. No other users of the iWave platform would have access to your ProScreen projects, your profiles, or any scores that you've generated. So just know that that is something that stays private and confidential to your account. So once you've done that, once you've given the system the file, it's going to do a check on it. This is important to note. You know, we want to make sure that any file you're giving the system is in the proper format, and we want to make sure that we screen everybody that you submit. So, you know, we've heard from many folks who've run many screening projects over the years and their experience in this world. Sometimes they'll run a screening with another vendor out there, and not everybody gets scored or rated or screened. You know, and we don't want to see that happen here with our users. So we've you know, we built this check system to tell you that, hey, you're submitting 27 records, but only 25 of them are in a valid format. If you'd like, please feel free to go back and fix line 5 and line 17, which contain errors. If you don't want to, you can simply process the file as is, and we will not charge you a valuable screening credit against those records that are in the invalid format. So I'm just going to approve and submit the file. And in short order, the vast majority of our screening files get returned in 48 hours or less. In short order, I will move from processing the file of new parents at the Alex Quinn Private Academy to, you know, a completed project where I can click in and view and see how my group has scored and see how everybody looks with a, you know, a group feel. So you know, we're now into that place where we've run the file, it's been processed, and we're now looking at these 25 households and how they score and rate in that file. And I mean, a lot of different ways and schools of thought here on how we should best approach next steps after we've run the screening. A lot of folks will simply sort on an estimate to give over a 5-year period and look at those prospects first. You may want to look at it differently. You may like to include an estimate capacity source, which is going to tell you Well, we're looking at Jeff Cunard here, who can give you this amount of money over a 5-year period. That is based on his charitable giving records. You'll see some of these will be based on real estate, others on income, others on charitable giving. Some could be on political giving, stocks and assets. It depends on the group of people you're looking at. You may like to add other columns. You may like to add a donations count or a total value, and maybe look at your more philanthropically active prospects first. You may also like to use the filters that we see on the top of the page here. So we talked earlier about using the RFM to your advantage. So maybe those folks with a lower RFM in your group of prospects, coupled with a high pro score, might be the ones we'd like to look at first. So these 7 folks have attained, the best score you can possibly attain of 4, and have not engaged very much with us yet as an organization at a philanthropic level. They're not giving to us recently, they're not giving to us frequently, they're not giving to us in large amounts. So their RFM scores are low, but they've got outstanding potential as a prospect. So they've engaged with us somewhat, they've given us a gift, or maybe several gifts. But when we compare that against their peers, no more recently, no more frequently, and not in larger amounts. So, maybe these folks, these 7 people of our file, are the ones we should cross off the list first. Once you've processed your screening, we can create profiles quite easily from your screening projects by simply clicking on this little gray plus symbol. We could select a group of people or a group of households and create up to 50 profiles at once from our screening projects. Once that's been done, we can click in, much like we done earlier with Mary and Sheldon. So if we want to actually see which properties and which charitable gifts and which pieces of information were matched up against against Jeff Cunard to give us the scores that we see here, we can pop into that profile, and the system will then tell us, well, Alex, here are the points of information, here are the records that gave him the scores that he's attained in the screening. So I'm just going to pop into my profiles tab here because I know that profile is there. And let me refresh my page. You'll see that I can search within my profiles, and if I want to see, which pieces of information are driving the scores that we see, you can easily pop into that from your profiles page. So easy to to check and validate and ensure that the scores that we see brought back in a screening indeed are valid and are driving the scores that we see there. So that's your pro screen overview. Ryan, I'm going to pass it back to you, and we'll keep rolling through some slides.
Great, thanks, Alex. So we're nearly wrapped up there now, but I wanted to cover some key takeaways from what we've talked about today. Number one is that for the most part, there's always something you can learn, something more that you can learn about your donors. With iWave, we're updating our data often daily, weekly, monthly. So as the data is about real people that are in your database, and as their lives are changing, the data associated with their wealth and philanthropic activity is also changing. So whether you have a few pieces of information and need to build a complete profile, or if you have a complete profile but are missing a few critical pieces to the puzzle, there's usually something new to find. So we didn't cover alerts today, but that's another feature that we have, and that is available to you in other platforms as well, but certainly within the iWave platform, is that you can set alerts to alert you whenever there's new information about your prospects and your profiles. Your needs tend to influence your strategy. So if you have lots of time and expertise related to research, the 360 search is your best friend. It's a great place to start. If you're running against the clock, or maybe you're dealing with a common name, GetScore works great for those individual prospects. And screening, as Alex mentioned, can help you segment, prioritize dozens, hundreds, thousands of donors at the same time. Really great for campaigns, or if you're looking to take a deep dive into your donor database and try and uncover those current or lapsed donors who might be able to give more this year versus last year. Your strategy then influences your tactics. So if you know that you will be running a screen soon, consider what your goals are for the screening, what information you need that you have available to attach to that template, and who will take action on the results. I believe I may have just lost. Okay, I think we're up and running there again. Not sure what happened there. So it's where was I there? So yeah, again, so another key takeaway is to always remember to customize your settings. So it's one thing when you're dealing with a standard out-of-the-box score that you had no part in creating, but when you and your team can determine how a donor is scored and even choose which records generate that score, you as the researcher can determine what an ideal major gift prospect looks like on an organizational basis, or maybe on a project-to-project basis. Because of that transparency, you always have the ability to regroup, refine the goals and settings, and refresh those scores to ensure your recommendations are accurate and relevant. So with all that said, I'm going to open up the floor to some questions. We have a few that came in, but again, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the question box. Feel free to type in some questions. We have a few minutes left before Alex and I have to jump off, but Alex, I'll give this first question to you. Is there a way to automatically update 360 search records when there are new details? So I think I may have alluded to that as well, but if you have any other thoughts on that, please shout out.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, anytime you want to update a profile, it's simple to run a search for any new records. Many of our data sets are updating on a daily basis, some weekly, some monthly. So you may wish to A, set an alert on that prospect of interest so the system can push new records to you, or B, if you do find new records via a search, you can simply add those records to an existing profile that you've already created, and then refresh the scores around in that profile so that it takes the new records into account.
Great. A next question, there are a few are coming in here. What advice can you give when you're searching for a donor through 360 search and there aren't many or any results that come back? Are there any other strategies you would use to find more results?
Yeah, so it would always depend on the name and how you're searching that name, and also depends on the status of that prospect or donor that you're searching on. So if you've searched them, you know, how I would recommend to search them, which would be always less is best, rather than if you've got a middle initial or city or state or province, you know, I would certainly encourage you to remove as much criteria as you can and rerun that 360 search to see if the results come back that you're looking for at that point. The alternative to consider is that prospect just isn't wealthy or philanthropic or doesn't have you know, much available to them within the public domain. Again, we mentioned the depth of our records here, covering 1.25 billion records. If Alex, you know, I'll use my own name as an example, if I'm not charitable, I'm not making gifts to organizations that recognize those gifts in the public way, or I don't own property, I don't sit on nonprofit boards, and I don't make political gifts, and I'm not gainfully employed, and you know, so on and so forth, then the information coming back on me will not be very robust. So yeah, those would be my recommendations there, is to, if you think there should be more on the prospect, check and see how you're searching them. Give us a call too. You know, feel free to give our support team or you know, whoever your point of contact at iWave is a call. We can run the name on this side to see if we yield any more information than you've found, and then show you how to find the information that we found. Or it could just be the person. You know, that person might not be very prominent, might not be philanthropic, or may not have much data available within the platform on them.
Okay, so I guess we're at the 45-minute mark, so we'll have time for one more question here. If we provide internal donation history, is that stored by iWave?
No, that is a big no. Certainly not. That would only be viewable and usable within your specific account. We do not store that here and use that in any way, shape, or form, other than to assist you, the organization who submitted it, with your needs. So, our charitable giving data that we include in our donations data set, our VeriGift information, has to have a source document attached to it. And that source document is available for every single one of our gift records. So, if you're, we would never include data in there that didn't have a valid source document attached to it, and that source document would have to be sourced via the public domain. So an annual report, a donor newsletter, an honor roll of donors, depends on the organization and how they might recognize their contributors. So, the short answer is no, but you got the long answer anyway.
Great. So with all that said, I think that we'll have to cut questions off there. I know a few people were asking if they could see how we customize the score preferences. So to that, I would say we do have this webinar recorded. You'll be receiving a recording of it later this week. So feel free to refer back to that. And also feel free to call in at any point for training if you're an iWave client. You can get somebody on the phone to walk you through those settings and how to customize those. So 2 options for you there. With that said, I wanted to thank Alex for taking us through the product today, and certainly thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Really appreciate your time, and as mentioned, we'll be sending a recording of this for your future reference in a video later this week. So Alex, do you have anything else to mention?
No, just a thank you. Thank you to everybody who took their time to attend. And, for anybody who's not an iWave client, we look forward to connecting with you, and anyone who is, reach out anytime, as you know, and we're here to help. So we look forward to chatting with anyone on the line.
Perfect. Well, that's great. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a good day. Talk soon. All right.